Have you ever just known something without logic, proof, or explanation? That quiet voice inside you that whispers the truth before you even ask the question. That's the High Priestess speaking. She doesn't shout, she doesn't command, she invites you to listen. Today, we step beyond the veil and explore the mystery, intuition, and sacred wisdom of the High Priestess. Hey friends, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Elizabeth and I share deck flip throughs, spreads, VRs, and so much more. Welcome back to the Fool's Journey. Today we're going to step into the energy of the High Priestess, the guardian of intuition and sacred knowledge. Now, in the tarot, the High Priestess teaches us that the answers that we seek are already within. We just need to trust ourselves enough to listen. Today, we're going to be looking at the High Priestess from the Universal Weight as well as the High Priestess from Tarot Disassembled. We can see here that the High Priestess is seated between two pillars. We have the B and the J, so that's Boaz and Jacquin. One signifies the dark, and the other one symbolizes the light. But bigger than that, it's also symbolizing balance, the balance of opposites, duality. It almost feels like an entrance that is being guarded here by the priestess. Now, last time we talked about the magician, and this is an archetype that, wants to take conscious control. But the high priestess teaches us to listen, to receive, and to trust the knowledge that exists beyond logic. Now, if you notice, there's a veil behind the high priestess, and it's meant to cover what is behind her because this is a space that is not meant for those that aren't ready to receive that knowledge or that information. So the veil is a reminder that spiritual insight comes with patience and also with deep understanding. Now, here at her feet, you'll notice the crescent moon, and also on her crown, she has the triple goddess symbol. And these are symbols of intuition, of cycles, subconscious wisdom. She's connected to divine feminine energy. In her lap, you'll see the Torah, right? And that represents hidden knowledge, sacred wisdom, esoteric teachings. These are going to be truths that are meant for us to discover, not necessarily to be taught. On the veil, we also see the pomegranate, also represented here, and the pomegranates are actually placed on the veil in the form of the tree of life. And the pomegranate represents abundance, fertility, some say the womb, definitely divine feminine wisdom, and even death. What I love about the high priestess is that she's going to teach us that not everything needs to be revealed at once, right? Some answers are going to come to us in silence or through dreams. We have to do that deep inner listening. Now, if you remember, last time we talked about the magician, and this archetype has an energy that shows mastery, but that's external, right? The high priestess thrives in the realm of inner knowing, and her energy shows up in everyday moments. Sometimes we have that moment, that gut instinct moment where you suddenly know something without any kind of proof, and it turns out to be right. That is going to be high priestess. There are times that you potentially sense another person's feelings, even if they don't say a word. The High Priestess is going to be teaching us emotional intelligence that is beyond words. At times, this energy can show up through dreams or symbols, right? You might see repeating numbers everywhere, or you tend to hear the same phrase all the time. Just the same way that the dream reveals guidance, she whispers through the unseen. High Priestess energy is going to hold back instead of reacting, right? With the Magician, you might want to jump right into action, but something tells you to pause and observe. And maybe later you realize that perhaps it was patience that was required. We live in a world that pushes logic and action, but the High Priestess is reminding us that sometimes wisdom comes through silence and reflection. I like to make the connection between the High Priestess and the twos in the tarot. Because the High Priestess represents dualities, that same way, all of the twos are going to reflect balance or choices or even opposing forces. So, with the Two of Wands, right, we have a decision to make, a choice between paths, planning for the future, but trusting the unknown. And then with the Two of Cups, you have this emotional balance. There's this beautiful sense of intuition that guides, our deep connections with other souls. Now, in the Two of Swords, we have a mental crossroads, so to speak, right? We need to look beyond the logic to find the real answer. It's that invitation to connect to your within. Notice the little moon there, same as the High Priestess. And then here we have the Two of Pentacles. This is all about the juggling act, right? The balancing act, trusting intuition in order to manage different priorities. It's almost like the High Priestess whispers through every two in the tarot, reminding us that true balance comes from inner alignment, not from external control. So let's take a look at some other cards from the tarot that also represent the High Priestess. So here we have the High Priestess from the Tarot of Light. This is a keyword deck, and you can see the keyword here, intuition, right? It's that invitation. You can see the third eye here. The figure's eyes are closed. It's that invitation to connect with your inner wisdom. Now, this card is from the Rosebud, and here we see the witch. And I like this because we see the dark pillar, we see the light pillar, the moon in the background, and almost like the reflection. This for me speaks to duality and to balancing the light with the dark. Now, here we see the High Priestess from the Simdala Tarot, and the activation for this card is actually acuity. Acuity. I thought that was a very interesting word to use. But actually, if you think about it, the High Priestess embodies both mental and intuitive acuity, right? Because there's this deep level of insight and ability to perceive beyond the surface. So I really like that choice there. Now, in the Vision Quest, we have the medicine woman, right? Different interpretation. We can still see the moon and all that is within her, which I love so much. And she is clearly connected to spirit. The title would suggest that the High Priestess in this deck is more than just a keeper of secrets, but actually an active healer, right? A guide that understands both physical and spiritual medicine. Now, here we have the priestess from the Sufi tarot, and we see the title Murshida, right? This is a spiritual guide, a teacher, an enlightened master, right? Someone who leads others towards divine wisdom and inner truth. So, same exact idea. I love that her gown becomes the water. We can see the crescent moon here. It's a really beautiful card. Now, in contrast to this, we have the wise woman from Forest of Enchantment. Here we see the high priestess in crone form. And I feel that in this card, there's more of a connection to nature and nature's cycles, but also nature as a teacher. And we can see this dark shadow on one side and then the light shadow on the other. I keep thinking of the wise woman and the idea that it's using nature as a teacher. Uh, so many times I have just kind of sat and observed animals out in the yard, or just, out on walks and stuff. And there's just so much to be learned. Sometimes insights or downloads come in, and it's exactly this energy here, right? The high priestess. So I love that card. Here, we're gonna look at the Gaian Tarot. I really love this one because it shows both. It shows the maiden and the crone, both halves, right? We can still see the veil. The water is there, the owl for wisdom. We have the moon. We have the pomegranate. This has always been one of my most favorite high priestess representations, because it kind of shows that this intuition is always with us from birth, from beginning to end, right? Birth to death. Like that will never leave us. We will always have access to that inner knowledge. This here is the High Priestess from Tarot of Mystical Moments. And, we can see that the priestess shields everything that is happening behind her. The moon, I kind of like this, that part of the moon is in front of the veil, and part of it is behind the veil. And I like the addition of the ship here because you can see that water energy is not always smooth. There's going to be periods where things are challenging and you might experience a block. This ship could be trying to get past the priestess to the other side, but it's being blocked. There's something there that that ship needs to learn. Now, this is a completely different high priestess, but stunning all the same. And this is from the lovely Om, and we can see the image, the face of the priestess, but also the celestial sky. We still have the moon. Instead of the pillars, we can see almost like these DNA strands on either side. Then, it almost looks like this is what's above the water with that wonderful pyramid, but then what's beneath the surface? What's in the darkness? We have, you know, an octopus here, but also these beautiful crystals, right? I just, the way that this card and then the third eye, it's just amazing. I really love the elements, the way that they've been put together in this particular card. Now, a couple other cards here. So we have Sally, beloved Sally. This is from Nightmare Before Christmas. And I couldn't have been happier with the choice uh, of Sally for the High Priestess because she was always in tune or connecting with her inner wisdom in order to try to help Jack along on his journey. So I love that. And then here we have the Mermaid Tarot, right? Another watery card. We can see the waves crashing here on the shore. And this high priestess almost has a little bit of magician vibes, but clearly manipulating energy here. It's just an interesting take, right? You don't really see what's happening. Her cloak almost forms tentacles of sorts. It's just a really interesting representation for High Priestess. Now, this card here, this is from Cirque du Tarot. This is a deck that I just really appreciate because it shows the majors in such a completely different way. And in this deck, the High Priestess is represented by the Ringmaster. The ringmaster shows up multiple times throughout the deck in different cards, and it's just so cool to see them adding the figures and them showing up in more cards than just their own. But you can see, um, if you think about the ringmaster of a circus and everything that happens behind the scenes, right? Like, it's just a perfect choice. So we see the curtain, it's partially parted here, right? We still have the two pillars. We have this little tree with the fruit here, maybe even kind of hinting at the fruit of knowledge. And then we have this pillar here with the light. So, kind of like that aspect of light and dark. And you notice that she has this pull string in her hand. She controls when the curtain opens and closes. And I love that. Now, I thought we could look at some cards that don't have any human figures. So here we have tarot landscapes, and here we have the naturescapes card. I love both of these. They're very cool. So here in tarot landscapes, we can see the waterfall falling into this pool here, right? It's dark, the moon is rising. We have that owl, signifying wisdom, right? The light shines in just the right way, limited visibility. I really like how they've done this. Now, there is no path, but we can kind of see these two, I don't know, we'll call them mountains. So there is a path straight through, but to get to the path, you have to get through the waterfall. And I like that. And then over here in the naturescapes, you have this abundance here, this lush field, and this mountain top here, and what looks like maybe the cloud or a sun potentially just beginning to rise, and the teeny tiny moon all the way on top. Again, you could see it's a journey, it's a path that we have to take. Everyone's path is unique and individual. It will be easier for some, maybe not so much for others. The other thing I will say is that sometimes it could appear to be easier for some, but each person's path is unique to them. They've been given the path that they need to take in order to pull the lessons. So something that appears easy from the outside looking in may not be. You just don't know. You don't know. You have no idea. So I love both of these representations. Friends, if you love tarot and you're interested in learning more about the archetypes, please be sure to subscribe. Tap the bell icon so that you don't miss any upcoming videos. If you know someone else who might benefit from this series, feel free to share. That is a wonderful way to help smaller channels like mine get their voices heard throughout YouTube. Thank you so much. So, what I thought we could do is a reading to tap into the energy of the High Priestess. So, I'm going to give my deck a shuffle, and I'll leave the questions in the description box in case you want to do the spread for yourself, maybe at the end of the video or come back to it at some other time. But we're going to be pulling a total of 3 cards today. So for card 1, what message is my intuition trying to reveal? Now, it's important to remember when we're pulling cards, make sure to do this with an open heart, right? Make sure that you take all the steps that you normally take when you're looking to connect with your inner wisdom. We have to remember that the High Priestess speaks in symbols. So, what message is my intuition trying to reveal? We have the Devil. All right. And then card number 2. What is currently hidden from me? So this could be like a deeper truth that isn't yet seen. What is currently hidden from me? Ooh, generosity of water. What a beautiful card. I'm going to shimmy these over. Here we go. So we have room for them all. It never fails. Every time I do this, they're crooked on the screen. All right. Now for the final card. How can I strengthen my connection to inner wisdom? Okay. How can I strengthen the connection to inner wisdom? Oh, curiosity of water. All right. So this is pretty cool. You know, we have a major and then we have 2 court cards. So generosity would be like the queen, and then curiosity is our page. Okay, let's start with card number 1. What message is my intuition trying to reveal? So here we have the witch, right? This is the card that we're reading on. So I'll move over here. We have the devil, card 15. What message is my intuition trying to reveal? I can't help but notice in this card, here we have the 2 pillars, right? Representing almost the doorway or the entrance, the path that needs to be taken. But here we see this rocky edge and this one here. There is a path, but it is blocked, right? So, what is my intuition trying to reveal? There's something getting in the way. Now, I see these roses here, so I can't help but think roses, you know, if we connect that to passion, as we learned with the archetype of the magician, red roses represent passion. So maybe there's something that we are very passionate about, but it's actually a roadblock for us, something that is getting in the way. You know, we can see these snakes too, right? Again, that issue of duality, just like over here. There's 2. They're both tangled and they are partially covering the moon, right? So limited light coming in. Whatever it is that is keeping us back from being able to cross into the path, there's limited light coming in. So it's potentially darker, right? More shadowy, more shadowy than normal. And because the snake is tangled, it indicates that there's some unraveling to do there. There's some work to be done, before you can get past onto the next step. We also see this planet back here, which I think is very interesting. That's Saturn. Saturn represents obstacles, right? Limitations. So there's something that needs to be seen, that needs to come to the light, that is holding us back from actually being able to access our inner wisdom. Okay. Now, card number 2. What is currently hidden from me? We have generosity of water. So this is Queen of Cups. In this image, we have our queen showing up in the form of a beautiful mermaid underwater, again, surrounded by flowers, but also sea life. And we see a turtle here. And also, I can't help but notice the watering can in the corner. This is a card here of deep intuition, of emotional intelligence. So the question, what is hidden from me? It's our ability to access that inner knowing that we need. Why? Because this card right here, there's something that is blocking the path. So let's look at card number 3. How can I strengthen my connection to my inner wisdom? Now, interesting, another core card and one of water as well. We have the page of water. We see the watering can, we see the rose, we see the creation of the castle, the beautiful water, that inviting sky in the background. So, how can we strengthen our connection to intuition? Maybe this card is suggesting curiosity. Maybe it's suggesting a little bit of creativity, a little bit more play. So, very interesting reading here. So, reminder, right? Like, if you're doing a reading on this kind of powerful energy coming from the archetype of the High Priestess, it's not going to be surprising to get powerful responses like the Devil card. The Devil card is suggesting, attachments. Maybe it's patterns or even illusions. That could be it too, right? Maybe you have illusions that could be influencing you, right? Sometimes the devil could be linked to limiting beliefs, unhealthy cycles, or maybe even external forces, right, that have control over our choices. And thinking about unhealthy cycles and what we've just learned about the High Priestess archetype, there was a lot to be learned from cycles. So, what happens when there's a blockage in the cycle? It's something to think about, right? It's really interesting. There's so many layers. I feel like this would be a journaler's dream to sit with all these different layers and try to peel it all apart. Don't be scared of that devil. It's not negative. It's just, an opportunity for awareness, which is what the High Priestess is encouraging us to do. Then in the position card number 2, we had generosity of water. This is what is currently being hidden. Well, that could be your intuition, emotional depth, and it could be that you're just not there yet. You're not ready to embrace it all yet. It's like there's an emotional truth that is ready, to be acknowledged. But this card here suggests that there's still some work to be done before you're ready to do this here, to fully accept and be. And then for card 3, right, we had curiosity of water. That was, how can I strengthen my connection to my inner wisdom? You know, this is a card that is inviting you to really to stay open and to be curious and to be willing to embrace any messages that come through without any filters, right? Because isn't that the beauty of kids? They see things in the most innocent of ways. And I feel like that's an important part of this message here. I feel like this card here is really calling us to allow space for playfulness, for exploration, but also for trust, right? Because that's a big part of the High Priestess too, is trusting what you know to be true inside. And there you have it. We basically have the High Priestess bringing attention to this card here, right? Unseen influences. It's reminding you to connect to that emotional wisdom that we all have inside, right? There are things that need to come to the surface. And then it's also encouraging you to to really trust and be open, right? Explore, be curious, ask why. You know, if you have something that comes up, ask why do I feel that way, why do I think that? You know, continue to ask until you get to the core. And remember that the High Priestess is not at all about force. The High Priestess wants you to surrender, right? Surrender to that deep inner knowing that we all have inside. I feel like this is quite a powerful reading, right? And it's basically guiding us towards having a little bit more awareness about what's going on in our emotional landscape, right? Inviting us to connect with our inner wisdom and to be okay with expansion, right? Which is kind of like the opposite of this energy here. When I think about this planet, Saturn, you know, those are restrictions or limitations. You know, we want Jupiter energy, right? We want Jupiter energy. We want to expand and learn and grow. And we can do that even with this card because we have the awareness, right? We can see what's happening and we can take a little bit of a closer look and see where we can start unraveling. It's like when you have a necklace and it's been in a jewelry box and somehow you go to pull it out to put it on and it has like a bunch of little knots like this, and you slowly start, you know, it requires a lot of patience, right? Sometimes to do stuff like this I use like a threading needle, and I just slowly carefully start picking, and sometimes you don't even know where to start, right? And you think to yourself, I just have to dig in, like I just have to dig in. So you pick a spot, even if it's not the right spot, you pick a spot and you start picking with the needle slowly, slowly. You know, you might get frustrated, you might stop, you might walk away, you then come back. But if you continue, you will eventually unravel it. And that is what I think of when I see these snakes here. So there you have it. The High Priestess is teaching us, right? That sometimes knowing is enough, even when you don't have any proof. She reminds us that intuition is real, that sacred knowledge exists, and that mystery is actually a gift. Now, in our next episode, we are going to meet the Empress. So we're going to be moving from inner wisdom into full creative, nurturing power. Please make sure to subscribe, follow along as we continue on the Fool's Journey. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.